afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Directors Club. And welcome to our autumn term Champions and Innovators of Customer Experience Webinar Festival. My name is John Snow. I'm the founder and chairperson of the Directors Club, and it's great to have your company today here on day 10 of our webinar festival. For those of you who haven't engaged with the Directors Club in the past, let me give you a brief history, and that will give you an insight into where we've come from and where we're going to. Directors Club originated as a supper club called the Directors Dining Club in 2007, and we were based at Claridge's Hotel in London's Mayfair. And once a quarter, we would come together as a roundtable group to discuss customer-centric topics of the day. Now, that continued for 3 years until 2010. And then under pressure from our members to do other things other than just have a nice dinner and a good conversation, we reconstituted as simply the Directors Club. Our mission since our original founding has stayed the same, and that is to facilitate learning, knowledge share, and networking across a broad church of customer-centric professionals. Now, we're particularly strong in customer service, customer experience, and customer insight, but we've been growing our membership in recent times to include the emerging job titles around digital and social and mobile. Today we have a diverse agenda in each of our 3 terms following the academic year, and they feature breakfasts, lunches, dinners, small-scale conferencing, and of course webinars. Now today is day 10, and our agenda is 2 formal presentations and a Q&A session at the end. And our 2 champions and innovators for today are Ian Williams, a director at Jericho, and Mariana Machado, customer behavior specialist at Accor. At the end of the webinar, in the final 15 minutes, we will be holding a question and answer session. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching the live broadcast, you can pose questions to our presenters at any time using the question function on your control panel. You simply click on questions and submit any question, short or long, totally up to you, and you can do that at any time, and we'll try and address as many of those as possible during that live Q&A session at the end of today's proceedings. But without further ado, we're going to get straight on, and I'd like to introduce Ian Williams, director at Jericho, and Ian is going to be presenting to the title Customer Experience Insight from Research to Prediction. Excuse me. So Ian, if you'd like to unmute yourself, and I will give you control over the presentation. If you click once on the main screen, and then away you go. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you very much for that introduction, John, and good afternoon to everyone. As John has mentioned, today's presentation, Customer Experience Insight from Research to Prediction. The purpose of the presentation is to look at the nature of research as we currently understand it, the evolution of research over time, but also what that means for organizations moving forward, the changes, the trends that we're seeing within the marketplace, and the impact that this is having on organizations, and the way in which they're having to rethink the way in which they gather information from their customers to make it relevant, to make it easy for them to change their organizations in light of that information moving forward. So without further ado, I will go on to the first slide. Okay, so the agenda for today, we'll have a look at voice of the customer and the 2 different types of voice of the customer. We'll have a look at design approaches on the back of voice of the customer data. We'll have a look at changing attitudes towards research and the impact that that's having on organizations moving forward. We'll look at new ways of listening, because obviously the changing attitudes towards research is changing the way in which organizations are having to interact and listen to their customers. And then finally, beyond listening, and that will become apparent when we get to that particular point in the presentation. So, first section of the presentation, voice of the customer. Okay, well, fundamentally what we see is that there are two main types of voice of the customer. When I say voice of the customer, I mean voice of the customer from a structured perspective. Lots of people talk about voice of the customer. Sometimes any type of research they throw into the category of voice of the customer, but we're looking very specifically about structured approaches to VOC. VOC being the abbreviation. If I start using that abbreviation, that's what I'm referring to during the presentation. So the first main type is what I would call research VOC, research-based VOC. And the approach that we would follow is using qualitative research, qual to quant, which is a filtering and conjoint analysis process for taking the information that you get from your qualitative research. So that might be focus groups, it might be telephone interviews. How you take that information in order that you can pull that information into quantitative research, the purpose of which is in order to substantiate the data, maybe running some kind of survey, and then at the end of it doing an analysis. And this is the approach that we typically use side by side with journey mapping in order to get a very good understanding of an organization's current state customer journey. Now, the benefit of doing research-based VOC is that you can utilize the information that you get to make a step change to your business, as opposed to the second form of VOC, which we'll come on to now. That's what I would call platform-based VOC. So a number of the people on the call may themselves have some kind of VOC platform. So typically it's a SaaS platform, so software as a service platform, built-in analytics, dashboards, and closed-loop feedback. So if you've heard of organizations such as Confirmit or Medallia or Maritz, Qualtrics, Questback, all of these organizations offer platform VOC services. What they enable you to do is to run surveys at various different touch points along the customer journey that enables you to gather information from customers. The great thing about VOC, platform VOC, is that you can close the loop on the feedback that you get from customers. And what we mean by that is if you as a customer, you're contacted via platform VOC, you're asked to give a score out of 10 for the particular touch point that you're interacting with the customer at. If the score you give is poor, then the organization has the opportunity to utilize your information to close the loop, to come back to you and say, look, why was it poor? Can you give us more information? How can we resolve your problem? You cannot, in theory, do that with research-based VOC. Research-based VOC sits within the rules of the Market Research Society. So in theory, because data is supposed to be anonymous, you shouldn't be allowed to utilize that to close the loop with customers. So that's the disadvantage of research-based VOC. However, platform-based VOC, typically, if it's implemented to an organization, then what it will enable the business to do is to make incremental changes at each of the individual touch points. So if your organization is performing, say for example, it's an average performer in the marketplace, you implement platform VOC, it will enable you to improve your service across those touch points, but it's not going to revolutionize your service. It's not going to make a significant step change to the way in which you approach your business. Whereas with research-based VOC, typically you would be able to map your current state journey and then utilize that information in order to be able to make decisions about what we would call future state journey mapping, which is almost a clean sheet of paper approach to redesigning your customer journey to make a significant step change to the way in which your business delivers the service. So when we work with organizations, typically we would make the recommendation to do research VOC first, and then once the significant improvements have been made to the way in which the service is delivered, on the back of that, then delivering some kind of platform-based VOC service. So those are the main two types of voice of the customer. However, we'd like to, I'll move you on now to design approaches, because the way in which service is designed has a significant impact in terms of changing attitudes towards research. So we have there are two main design approaches that organizations typically follow. So there's customer-led design. So utilizing research to understand customers' wants and needs makes perfect sense to do that. If you want your customers to like the service that you provide, then you obviously need to be getting their feedback in order you can make improvements to your proposition. So then you design products and services to meet the wants and needs of the customer-led research that's been undertaken. Then on the other hand, there's innovation-led design as well. So this is where you take an idea or an invention-based approach to design, whereby customers sometimes don't know what they want or they need until they experience it. So if you think of a number of the innovations and inventions out there that have made a significant step change, they change the way in which we look at the world in many instances. Now, customer-led design is fantastic because it's responding to customer needs. However, it doesn't necessarily create that revolution, because, as we say, customers don't always know what they want or need until they experience it. And the perfect example of this is the smartphone. Now, 10 years ago, none of us had smartphones, or it was the beginning of the smartphone age. Before smartphones came along, we weren't aware of them. They did. If I'd have asked you what would have changed your life, you probably wouldn't have said, well, a smartphone would do, or something that I can hold in my hand, which is like a mini computer. I can look at the screen, I can do my emails, but it's integrated in my telephone. But now we've got them, the common response is, I can't live without it. And that's all innovation-led design. That hasn't really come from customer feedback. So the two approaches work well hand in hand. Typically, innovation makes that step change, and again, the customer research enables us to make improvements on what already exists. So with that in mind, we'll have a look at changing attitudes towards research. One of the things we've identified is that there's significant increase in apathy towards research. So people are responding less favorably to a pop-up survey on a website. One of the things that really annoys me, I don't know about anybody on the call, is that I can go onto a website, I can click on a page, and before I've even had a chance to look at the page, I get a pop-up survey that comes along and says, oh, would you mind rating how good the site is? Well, I haven't had an opportunity to look at the site, so how can I provide you with a response? However, secondly, it's annoying. If I'm on the website, I'm doing something, I'm looking for something specifically, I'm not going to take the time to fill out the survey. So there's increasing level of apathy that we find towards surveys, and responses are decreasing. People, ironically, are more likely to go onto the social media site, onto their social media profile site, and criticize the brand they're about to spend, that they are, than they are to spend time telling you where you've gone wrong. So if you've annoyed a customer, they're not going to fill out a survey and let you know where you've gone wrong. They'll go onto the social media site, probably spend as much, if not more time, criticizing your organization than it would have taken them had they filled out the survey. But that's the nature of customer behavior. And as a result, we're having to change the way in which we gather information from customers. So does this mean we now have the death of voice of the customer? Well, are we seeing the death of traditional surveys and VOC approaches? Well, I would say not quite yet. What we're seeing is the market research organizations and VOC platform providers are changing the way in which they gather information, because they're recognizing this increase in apathy. and they don't want it to affect them moving forward. So they're having to look at different ways of approaching this particular issue. So moving on, new ways of listening. So there's social listening. So I don't know how many people on the call have social listening or are aware of it, but the description that I gave you of the person who goes onto their social media profile and complains about your organization. Now, in order to be able to gather information from those particular people, there's a way in which you can do social listening. So there are various different platforms where you can scrape the internet and social media sites for keywords that relate to your brand, and then you can gather information from those particular sites. Then you can pull that data into a central repository and run sentiment analysis. So sentiment analysis, I won't go into a great deal of detail, but this is a way in which, using an algorithm, we can derive the sentiment coming from the verbatim text, be that positive or negative emotional response to the service. So the question I would pose at this point is, can customer wants, needs and issues be understood at a touch point level? So it depends on the level of detail that a customer's gone into when they write whatever they write on social media, as to how well the organization is able to, first of all, take that information and am I able to relate that comment on the social media site to a specific customer? That's the first challenge. And secondly, has the customer provided me with enough information so that I can tell that the issue that the customer's had has been at this beginning of has been during the servicing of the customer, or has been during the sales process with the customer. So those are some of the weaknesses potentially with social listening. That it's a very good source of information, but can you relate it to a specific customer, and can you tell which part of the service delivery that the piece of feedback relates to? Next of all, operational data science. So identification of value and failure demand from within existing business data. So you don't necessarily have to do research, you don't necessarily have to do social listening. Often organizations have a lot of information, but then it's just sitting there. There are ways in which you can interrogate and analyze that data in order to understand what we call value and failure demand. So value is where the organization is spending time doing things of value to the customer, and failure demand is where the business is spending time doing things to fix problems for customers. And there's loads of data within organizations. All that needs to be done is ordered in the right way and analyzed, and you can derive a lot of information from it. So potentially you would, again, as with the social listening data, run sentiment analysis of the free-form text. So that might be anything from complaints, emails, systems data, etc. So we help organizations do that. So it's part of a piece of work we're doing at the moment with one financial services organization. Before they go on to research and platform-based VOC, we're interrogating their data to try and get a much better understanding of what their current business data is telling us. So then potentially you can correlate this data with customer feedback. So if you do have customer feedback data, there's no reason why you couldn't take social listening and operational data science data, correlate that data back to the customer feedback data to gain a greater understanding of key behavioral drivers. So potentially you can understand the parts of your service which are most likely to drive repurchase, recommendation, etc., satisfaction, etc., etc. Okay, so moving on. Beyond listening. Okay, so new things that we need to think about. So if your organization has a lot of data already, you can utilize that data to build predictive models so that you can try and understand what a consumer is going to do moving forward based on the information that you hold about them. So using customer profile and behavioral data to predict what they might do next based on their history and the behavior of others with similar profiles. So you can build a pretty accurate understanding as to what a customer might do next. And one example of this that we see in action, both Google and Amazon use semantic models relatively early and simplistic approaches, but they're already in practice. So if you type into Google, you're looking for something, it'll give you suggestions on the page as to the things that you might be looking for. And fundamentally, that's a predictive model that's trying to guess what it is that you're going to type next based on what other people have typed, based on the characters that you've entered. And when you go on Amazon, if you look at a particular thing, at the bottom you've noticed other people who bought this item also purchased. So what they're trying to do is make based on your behavior and your activity, make recommendations to other things that you might be interested in, because other people with similar profiles to you bought these additional items, and therefore the logic is that they may also be of interest to you as well. So the whole point of predictive modeling is, can we predict what somebody wants before they even know that they want it? And then the same applies to customer needs. So if a customer has a need, can we anticipate their need before they even realize that they have a need? So if an organization isn't fulfilling a need, that can drive dissatisfaction. But if we can actually fulfill a need before a customer is even aware of it, then clearly we're not even getting into the dissatisfaction space. We're actually resolving their problems before the customers are aware of them. Next of all, the Internet of Things. So interconnection of everything digital via the Internet. You've probably heard about a lot of talk about the Internet of Things. But the great thing about it is that we can see it. I like to refer to it as the EPOS of everything. So in a shop, if you have an item scanned through a till, electronic point of sale immediately tells your stock system behind what needs to be reordered. And it's a similar principle with the Internet of Things. It gives people what they need or what they want before they even know that they want it. So they're talking now about possibly smart fridges, whereby the fridge can add, if the fridge senses the area in the fridge where you normally put your milk, the milk is running low, then potentially there would be the possibility of adding milk to your Sainsbury's delivery order so that you didn't have to do that for yourself. So anticipating a need before you're even aware of it. And then I'd like to give you an example of smart cities, which is one of the things that gets spoken about with the Internet of Things. So now we're already seeing traffic management in Cambridge, for example. They already have a relatively simple, straightforward traffic management system. So centrally controlled traffic signals and sensors regulate the flow of traffic through the city in response to demand. So reduces congestion and pollution markedly, smoothing traffic flows, prioritizing traffic. So what we've got here is meeting customer demands proactively. So reacting to the information that you have of GPS data about the flow of traffic and saying, okay, well, we'll put this particular traffic light on red for 5 seconds, not 20 seconds, because that will improve the flow of the traffic around the city. So this is meeting customer needs before they even proactively in real time. And then, of course, we have utilities. We've seen a lot of talk from some of the utility providers around smart meters. The control of that is managed by the utility, so not a city level, but it's still applicable to the smart city discussion. So regulating power supply efficiency, significantly improving on the billing experience. And I've worked with a number of different utility providers, and it's the billing experience within utilities which is significant. So one utility provider that we've been talking to recently have recognized that they want to significantly improve customer satisfaction. It will be around billing, and the quickest way to shortcut that would be by accelerating their smart meters program. Okay, so any questions? We'll come on to questions at the end, so I will move off the call now and hand back over to John. But thank you very much for everybody's time, and I look forward to listening to your questions later on.
Great stuff, Ian. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're on the live call, post the live call, I will be sending out a thank you email with the contact details for both of our presenters today. But they are on the screen if you're watching the video recording. And as I say, if as Ian said, if you wish to ask him any questions, you can pop those on the question function on the control panel, and we can come to those at the end of the presentation. But thank you for now. There we go. So In terms of questions, one that came out of your presentation, Mariana, but I'll direct it to Ian, is the whole area of personalization, because I'm assuming that as organizations go down the personalization route in terms of their relationship with the customer, and they try and go right down to that micro level in terms of understanding each and every customer, then I'm assuming, Ian, that that has an impact on voice of the customer strategies and tactics, etc. Have you got any insight on that in terms of personalization versus VOC?
Certainly from a research-based VOC perspective, then clearly that's a research process. So you would drive that activity on the back of customer data that you've been provided with. But clearly, it isn't seen as a marketing tool. It's more seen as a research gathering tool. The information and enables you to gain a better understanding of people at an individual level. However, typically that's aggregated at a segment or persona level for redesign of the service moving forward. But certainly, when you look at platform VOC, the interesting thing from that perspective is that all of the data, most of the VOC platforms, if not all of them, have some kind of two-way integration with their CRM systems, which means that based on the information that you get back from customers, you can change the specific response that you provide to an individual customer. So you can personalize the way in which you act with them based on the information that you hold about them from their CRM, from your CRM database, but also taking into consideration the new data that comes in from that customer relating to their service experience, even down to a touch point level. So if you've got, as part of your VOC platform, a number of surveys operating at different touch points, you can have a pretty good understanding as to what you need to be doing to personalize and improve the service to that customer at a specific moment in time, at a specific touch point, and also in a specific channel. So yeah, that plays very much into the hands of the personalization. The platform-based VOC plays very much into the hands of the personalization argument.
Mariana, just leading on from that, from what I perceived from your presentation, and lots of people who are asking questions congratulate you on your presentation. It's really, really, really good. And but what I perceive is you're going to be asking the customers to engage with their sort of personal profile within your digital system, and to give you lots of information about their likes and dislikes and what makes a great stay, and et cetera, et cetera. How are you going to encourage them to actually do that digital engagement piece?
Well, it's a lot of work actually, because we cannot ask customers to engage if you're not able to offer anything. That's for sure. So the basic is to guarantee that inside our hotels, so it's a lot of work with the hotels, the operational, to see actually what do we mean about offering an excellent service. So this is the first one. The second one is that there are some information that we need that is not only about personalizing the stay, but during all the journey. So when I showed you about Dream, about book, search, and everything, that we can reach with this kind of information. So we have three blocks. The first one, as I said, is with the operational team. So working with the hotels and our brand to see what can we do, what can we expect doing in the future, and what is that attached to what we can ask the customer. There's no point of asking him if he's like, I don't know, skiing, in a place that I don't have it, I don't know. So this is the first thing. The first block is operations. The second one is that what can we personalize in information? Meaning, can I send him information? If he likes tennis, can I send him information about the next tennis concept that we're going to have here in Paris? Is that going to be relevant for him? can I ask him to participate in the VIP event with a partnership that I can make with this concert tennis thing in Paris, because I know that I have customers with them. What can I do with the information itself? There's nothing to do with the staying thing, with the staying to our hotels, but with the experience with the car. And 3 is about what can I look in the future to do? Meaning, perhaps there's nothing that I can do right now with what I have into my hands right now. That does not mean that I cannot do in the future. For example, here in France, we are doing a pilot to push to customers specific partnerships, local partnerships attached to the customer profiling, such as buying, discounting to restaurants around the hotel you're going to stay, service from concerts. For example, we have Accor Arena today. It's the biggest concert place here in Paris. They have concerts from all different kinds of artists today that I can look in the future and say, okay, I'm going to push that to members that like this kind of actor of artists or stuff. So we have to work in the future based on what the customer is willing to give it today. The one thing that is, just to finish, is that we need to be transparent. We need to let them know why we're asking that questions or why we want to know about them. This is the only basic thing.
Ian, let me just build on that sort of how to get people to engage with the organization and to give information about the service, the product, the experience. Have you got any sort of low-hanging fruit, top tactics for getting people to engage with voice of the customer, especially platform VOC? It's one of those things that I think, as Mariana said, you need to be able to tell people why you're asking them and perhaps give them something back in return. Sort of, is there anything that you would advise, as an immediate win or an easy win to get that engagement?
I think the point that's just been made is a really important one. First of all, you need to build some real logic into the way in which you do your surveys. So, ironically, often people who do VOC activity, platform VOC activity, they need to think very carefully about the user experience of the people taking the survey and understand what is and isn't going to work. So if, for example, it's online, it's digital engagement, then don't throw a survey at them when they've just landed on a page. There are certain techniques. If for example, there's some talk within the industry about if somebody started to head towards the top right-hand corner of the page with their mouse and they were about to click on the red X to take them away from the page, is that the point? Can you stimulate a pop-up at that point and ask them at that particular point in time, would you like to provide us with some survey feedback? Or as somebody's clicking on the top right-hand corner, bring a pop-up at that point and saying, look, before you close the window, would you provide us with some feedback? So making sure you're asking the question at the most logical point in the interaction with the customer to optimize. But I would reiterate the point that Mariana made about if you're going to ask for customers for information and say, look, we'd like your feedback on what's going to happen. I think on the service that's been provided, I think one of the main criticisms of customer satisfaction surveys over the years is that people undertake them, but then they don't notice a significant change in the service. Often people think, well, I'm not going to fill out this survey because it's just not going to make a difference. I don't notice any difference. It just seems to be, there seems to be this perception that people are just gathering information for the sake of it and they're not actually going to do anything with it. So the argument is to say, when you're requesting somebody to fill out a survey, make it obvious and say, look, if you fill out this survey, this is what we will do with the information. This is how we will improve the service. The information you provide us with is going to be actively utilized to improve our service, and that provides people with an encouragement to actually get engaged. But clearly, You don't want things to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The people who like your service most are probably more likely to fill out the survey. The people who are more inclined to fill out surveys will fill out surveys. So those people less inclined, all you can do is find very, very subtle ways when to ask them the survey, tell them what you're going to do with the data if they fill out the survey, and then they're going to be more likely to engage with you.
Ian, Mariana, unfortunately, time has beaten us as always. The Q&A can always continue a little bit longer than we have on the webinar. So I'm going to draw it to a close there, and thank you very much for your time and efforts putting together your presentations, both Ian and Mariana. Very, very insightful session, and on behalf of the audience, I thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for spending some of your time today with us on this webinar. And if you are watching live, we've got 2 more days of our webinar festival. So go to directorsclub.org.uk and you can find out more about those 2 remaining sessions at 12 p.m. UK time on Tuesday and Wednesday. So thank you very much. Hopefully you will join us at a future event, be it a webinar, be it a breakfast, be it a dinner, and I very much look forward to having your company then. So until we meet again, have a very good rest of your day.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you. Bye.